In the first and perhaps only presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, the two candidates sparred verbally, often attacking each other in a very personalized manner. Whatever exchanges they had or differences they had over policy were largely overshadowed by their fiery exchanges over character and crowd size. So, who won the debate? Harris or Trump? Let's find out. Political pundits, analysts, and commentators found that Trump had often found himself defensive on issues like abortion, but that was expected. But the bigger problem was that he allowed Harris to bait him on multiple occasions and then he just veered off message. In one such instance, the vice president belittled the crowds that were attending, or at least the size of the crowds that were attending Trump's rallies. That forced Trump into a meandering ramble, which ended up with his rather bizarre claim, which was really the most hilarious moment of the debate, where Trump said that immigrants were eating up cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. At another point in the debate, Harris even suggested that American military leaders, including many who have worked with Trump, viewed him as a disgrace. Trump often responded to these smirks, to these jabs, very angrily. He declared that Harris had no policies of her own and that she was the worst vice president in the history of America. After the debate, many Democratic strategists and officials were all cheers for Harris and her performance, declaring her to be the winner.
From the handshake and the fact she came over and she commanded the room and she put Donald Trump on the defense throughout the entire night, I can't imagine it won't move the needle on those polls.
On the other hand, Republicans complained about the tenor of the questions, the balance of the moderators, and also acknowledged that Trump did miss quite a few opportunities to land his punches.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Kamala Harris made a lot of mistakes tonight. But again, I go back to what I said earlier, which is that there was no real substance. If you listen to Kamala Harris talk for 90 minutes, and you would hear a person talking as if she weren't the sitting vice president of the United States of America. She is in office now and has been for 3.5 years. It's her policy that caused these problems.
All in all, it seemed like Harris had a better debate night than Trump. Let's start at the beginning. As both candidates walked in, Harris walked across the room to deliver a handshake. Trump was caught a bit off guard. This was, after all, the first handshake in a presidential debate since 2016, which is when Trump first ran for office. It was the first time that Harris had met Trump in person, and it was an awkward handshake which started things off. After a nervous start for about the first 5-odd minutes or so, Kamala Harris stepped up her game. She laid the bait, and Donald Trump took it. It began with her needling Trump that his rallies were boring, his supporters were leaving his rallies, so on and so forth. It continued with her comments that Donald Trump had inherited so many $1 billion from his father and yet filed for bankruptcy 6 times. And it went on as Harris invoked some of Trump's foremost Republican critics, including those who've worked with him, who've served in his administration in the past. At one point in the debate, Harris invited viewers to watch a Trump rally for a more unfiltered view of the former president. She said, and I quote, "You will never hear him talk about your needs." That's the point where she sort of sniggered at him for the rally size, the crowds, the paltry crowds that he was inviting, and of course, also about the fact that they were leaving his rallies halfway through. He responded to it. This was bait. He took it. He responded to it, not by talking about the voters or their needs, but about crowd numbers. Now, this, remember, is a bit of a sore point with Trump. He has in the past accused Harris and her campaign of using AI images to bolster her crowd sizes. He started off and he pushed back by saying, and I quote again, "People don't leave my rallies." And then came what was the funniest and easily the zaniest moment of the debate, where Trump went on to say that immigrants from Haiti are eating pets, dogs and cats in an Ohio city. And that led to a fact check and a pushback from David Meyer, one of the ABC News moderators. On foreign policy, Harris often forced Trump to defend his closeness to authoritarian leaders like Prime Minister Orban of Hungary and his past bromance with President Putin of Russia. She went on to say that Trump, if he became president again, then Putin would eat him for lunch. She also said that if Trump was still president, then Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. Trump, of course, countered that by saying that it was Putin who endorsed Kamala Harris and not him just in the last few days running up to the debate. She also pressed him on the Israel-Hamas war when he pushed back, trying to frame Harris as anti-Israel and anti-Jew and pro-Palestine, saying that she even refused to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, who came to Washington a few months ago. Abortion was one of the biggest missed opportunities for President Joe Biden in the first debate. It was the first debate that knocked off Biden out of the race. But Harris made sure that in this debate, it was one of her strongest moments. Trump, of course, is keenly aware of his vulnerability on a topic like abortion. He, of course, had appointed the Supreme Court justices who helped overturn Roe v. Wade, the long-standing federal judgment which protected women's reproductive rights. Trump clarified, quite defensively, he said that he was not in favor of a national abortion ban and that he would leave it to individual states to decide. Harris responded to that by saying that Trump's position on abortion is an insult to most American women. Kamala Harris warned that world leaders were laughing at Donald Trump and saw him as a disgrace. And when she referred to the 2020 election loss as the moment when Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people, Trump grew visibly angry. Harris repeatedly baited him into going off topic or doubling down on positions which are not particularly Trump's strong suit, positions that are unpopular. She cleared the bar both in terms of telling her own personal story and at the same time going deep enough on policy. Now this is, remember, is a tough balancing act. Most Americans still view Kamala Harris as an unknown commodity, and that was one of the big findings of the recent New York Times poll. When the debate focused on the border or the economy, Trump had the upper hand, but too often he took the bait from Kamala Harris and he gave her a pass instead. While the vice president clearly got under Trump's skin, she offered little beyond platitudes. There was not a definitive defense of her and Biden's track record over the last 4 years, whether it's on immigration or on the economy. But then Trump did not put Harris on the mat either. Harris played the long game in the debate tonight. She let the former president take the bait on some of his close relationships with dictators like Orban, Kim Jong-un, and Putin. But the most memed line of the debate, and perhaps what will be remembered most in this debate, were the conspiracies around immigrants eating dogs and cats in American cities. Trump will find that one hard to live down.